Cook with Susan Beck. Well, today we are going to make a delicious chimichurri sauce. Oh, I just can't wait until my herbs get big and beautiful like this. Check out this basil. This is the best time to make chimichurri sauce because we're going to use oregano and cilantro and the basil. We will be using a shallot and a jalapeno and some garlic from the garden, and you know, by August all this stuff is ready to go, and so it's just the perfect time to make a chimichurri sauce. You can always make it with dried herbs and things from the grocery store, but when you have your garden or your farmer's market, that's the time to make chimichurri sauce. So for a little closer look at our herbs, here is my cilantro, and I am starting to get a lot of flowering, so I'm going to use just some of these lower leaves and avoid the flowers. We'll pick those in a minute. My basil, I've just got gigantic, beautiful leaves of basil that we're going to pull off. And then we've got thyme and oregano over here. We're not going to be using that little thyme. We're going to use this oregano though, and we're just going to use the leaves, and we'll pick those off the stalks as well. All right, with the cilantro, I'm just going to use a pair of scissors, and I'm just going to snip off some of these stems here. And like I said, I'm not going to be using these parts that are flowering, so I'm just going to kind of avoid the top parts and just use the bottom leaves. I don't really want those flowers in it. I find that's a challenge with cilantro, is like getting it planted so that it's ready to use. I'll be making salsa, you know, in another like 3 weeks, and it's already blooming. It seems even if I wait and plant it later, I still always have this trouble. But I don't know, I still use it, so I'm going to then just pick off all of the leafy parts. I don't want those great big stems. I just want these nice leafy pieces. And I just need 2 tablespoons of fresh cilantro. All right, let's move on down to the basil. For the basil, I just simply pull off these big, gorgeous leaves, and I just, you know, take them from a variety of plants here. And we need about 4 tablespoons of basil. All right, the other thing we're gonna pick is the oregano. To harvest the oregano, I can either use the scissors and just snip off one of these pieces of oregano, or sometimes I just come out and just pull a few leaves off depending on how much I need. So today we want just a tablespoon of oregano. Oh, these herbs. I just love the smell of them. I mean, your whole hands smell like these herbs after you pick them, and I'm just so excited to use them in this chimichurri sauce. Let's have a look at some of the other things we need to make chimichurri. We need a cup of olive oil, 2/3 cup of red wine vinegar, and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. That'll give us our liquid base to this. Now, if you don't have red wine vinegar, just any vinegar would work. I mean, substituting really isn't a huge deal. And here we have our cilantro and our oregano. Our basil's laying back there ready to be chopped. I've pulled this nice little, these are like my green bunching onions. I don't know, I use them interchangeably with shallots, but just use onion if you don't have any of that, or you can even just leave it out. I'm going to be using, I've got 2 giant cloves of garlic. We want about 3 tablespoons of minced garlic. I'm going to use 1 jalapeno, and I'm going to remove most of the seeds and veins from that. Parsley, something I do not grow in my herb garden this year. So I am going to use, instead of 1 cup of fresh parsley, I'm going to use about 1/3 cup of dried parsley. You don't have to use fresh herbs for any of this recipe. As I said, I'm using the dried herbs for the parsley because that's the one I didn't grow this year. And I just reduce from 1 cup to 1/3, using about 1/3 of whatever herb you're going to use in the dried form. So if we needed 4 tablespoons of basil fresh, then I would need about 1 1/3 tablespoons of the dried basil. So this is definitely something that you don't have to have the fresh herbs, but oh, you know, like I said, there's just nothing like these fresh herbs in this sauce. It's just gonna be so tangy and light and just, I just can't wait to have it tonight. Tonight I'm going to serve it on grilled pork chops. Now, to cut this basil up a little more, I like to just kind of roll those leaves all together and just use a sharp knife and just cut them into like some little ribbons. Now, this is how I use it when I'm going to use it for, you know, throwing it into pasta or something like that. Today, though, we're using the food processor, so it doesn't really matter if I've chopped this all up or not. I never measure with this recipe either. 4 tablespoons, give or take. That might have been closer to 6, but I sure love the basil. Now the cilantro, again, if I was going to use this like in a fresh salsa, I would chop it up a bit. But my blade and my food processor will take care of that. Okay, we only wanted about a tablespoon of oregano. So in that goes, and then I've got that dried 1/3 cup of parsley instead of a full cup. Time to take that jalapeno and cut that up. So I'm gonna cut off the little stem on the top. And then I like to just cut them in half. And then once they're in half, these melon ballers work great. A spoon would do the same thing. And I'm just going to scoop out the seeds. Pull those out of there. So this half of the jalapeno is completely cleaned out compared to this one, where I still have this big rib running through and those seeds. So a spoon or a melon baller, just scoop it through and it just pulls those right out. If there's a few seeds left, that's okay. A little kick doesn't hurt anything. Now, last night I made jalapeno poppers and I cut up, I believe it was 18 of these. I wear gloves if I'm going to handle more than 1 or 2 because it's so easy to get those seeds on your hands or under a fingernail or something, and then you touch your eyes and it burns. So be a little bit cautious with the seeds. I cleaned off my cutting board. There's a couple seeds on the knife. Like I said, a few seeds, no big deal, but if you don't want it super spicy, then you might want to get rid of those. And you know, it's just funny, my chickens will gobble those seeds right up. They don't seem to mind that spiciness at all. All right, so next is the shallot. Now again, this doesn't have to be in super small pieces. I do like to chunk it up a little bit, maybe into 4s, because it's just gonna go directly into the food processor. Same thing, I'm gonna just cut those jalapenos in half a little bit, but food processor's gonna do really all of my chopping work. All right, next is the garlic. And oh, I have such big, beautiful garlic cloves this year in the garden. We saved some of the nicest ones and we'll replant them at the end of October here in Wisconsin and let them grow and have them popping up, one of the first things out of the ground in the spring. I'm gonna use this little silicone roller. This is just fantastic for getting the husk off of the garlic. So it's hollow in the middle, so my cloves are almost too big to fit in there, but I'm gonna put them inside, and then I just roll this, and then that husk just becomes nice and loose. All that papery part comes off. Let's do that again. This one here is even a little bit bigger, but it still fits. Roll it back and forth, and then I just clean this thing by popping it over one of the spokes in the top of my dishwasher. Okay, again, I'm just gonna chop those garlic cloves up a bit here, and we'll toss those in. Oh, see, I've got just a little bit of papery skin on that one still, so off that goes. All right, into this also, we're gonna use 2.5 teaspoons of salt and 1 1/4 teaspoons of pepper. Again, little pepper grinder, it's easier just to crank it right over the bowl. Not exactly sure how much I have, but you know, you can always give this a little taste and see what you think of it. All right, in goes 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And we're gonna put in, oops, there's my lid, the 2/3 cup of, I do happen to have red wine vinegar. I'm gonna go ahead and just put that down on the bottom. And I'm just gonna pulse that a little bit and then slowly add my olive oil in a minute. All right, just giving that a few pulses to kind of break it up a little bit and get like that garlic and onion into smaller pieces. We do not want to turn this into a total puree. We do want it a little bit chunky. So I am going to add my olive oil slowly while this runs. And my chimichurri sauce is now finished. Let's just transfer this chimichurri sauce into a measuring cup here. Use a spatula and get out all of those great herbs. I got about 2 cups of chimichurri sauce here. So you might be thinking, well, what are you gonna do with the chimichurri sauce? Well, It tastes great with bread dipped into it, like a big, good, crusty loaf of French bread or something toasted. That's delicious. You could put it on potatoes or sweet potatoes and roast them. You could use it as a salad dressing, or if you're into like grain bowls, this could be your like little salad dressing. With that, top it on a sandwich or on a burger. Today, I am going to use mine with that crusty bread as a little side dish, but I'm going to put it on my pork chops that I am going to grill tonight. So into this Ziploc bag goes my pork chops. I've just got 6 little boneless pork chops here today, and I'm just gonna put, probably around half of it is all I'm gonna need, maybe not even quite half. So whatever if you put it on the meat, then it's wasted and done for. So don't use more than you need to marinate like a meat, because any marinade should be discarded. So for me, I've still got at least a cup in there. 1 cup is gonna cover these quite well. And I'm gonna let these marinate. It'll probably be about 2 hours before I'm ready to grill, maybe even closer to 3 hours as I look at my clock there. So I've just covered my pork chops with that. So you could, another thing on steak, like put just a little dollop on it after you grill the steak. Like sometimes you get that like garlic butter on the top of it or a blue cheese butter. Put a little dollop of chimichurri sauce on it. Okay, these will go back in the fridge. I will grill these later. And right now, we're going to give this chimichurri sauce a taste. I just know I'm gonna love it because I've made it so many times. Oh, and it's absolutely delicious. Another use, I could probably just sit and drink this stuff almost. The lemon just gives it such a freshness. The herbs that are fresh are just so noticeable in there. You've got the acidity, from the lemon juice and the vinegar, but then you've got the fat coming from the olive oil, and you really do need to try chimichurri sauce. Now, as I said, I only used 1 cup of this chimichurri sauce on the pork chops. So you could easily cut this recipe in half if that's all you wanted. It's just enough to marinate some meat in. But, it's so easy to save this. I can just put a little piece of plastic wrap over the top of this and keep it for at least 5 to 7 days in the refrigerator. Now that oil will separate a bit and you'll have to kind of whisk it back together, but perfectly usable. Another option, put it into a container, put a lid on top, and pop it into the freezer. And then the next time I want to make pork chops, I've got my other cup ready to go. If you think you're going to use it in smaller amounts, but not in the near future, you could put it into little ice cube sections and fill an ice cube tray up. Put it in the freezer. Once it freezes, you can get these to pop out, and then I just stick them into a Ziploc bag, and then you could use them in, tablespoon quantities, or a couple tablespoons if you melted more than 1 of these. So many options on how to save your chimichurri sauce if you make more than you need today.